Dogs Don't Tell Jokes by Louis Sachar, Chapter 4. Floyd Hicks Junior High School was named after Floyd Hicks, a very wealthy and boring man who was born on November 16, 1903 and died January 14, 1969. He donated the property on which the school was built. He also wrote a book about himself. There were 10 copies in the school library, and no one, not even the librarian, had gotten past the second chapter. But it was Floyd Hicks Junior High School, so every November 16th, they celebrated Floyd Hicks Day in honor of the great man. This year, there would be a talent show, which was ironic because Floyd Hicks had absolutely no talent. The Spirit Club made posters, and Gary spotted one when he came to school. "Can you sing, dance, or play the tuba? Floyd Hicks wants you in the talent show." He went straight to the office. The office was crowded with kids and adults, all waiting to speak to Mrs. Walls, the school secretary, who was constantly being interrupted by the telephone. Gary waited nervously. "This is my big break," he muttered. "What?" said the woman beside him, who was holding a box. Gary looked at her. "Huh?" he said. The bell rang. "Oh, great," he said. "Now I'm late for class." "Are you talking to me?" asked the woman with the box. "Huh?" said Gary. He imagined himself up on stage in an auditorium, jokes rolling off his tongue and the audience rolling in the aisles. Suddenly, he'd become popular. Kids who had never talked to him before started hanging around, waiting for more of his jokes. "Gary, you're too much," says Brenda Thompson, one of the more popular girls in the 7th grade. "Just call me Goon," he replied. "Yes, Gary," said Mrs. Walls. "Just call me Goon," he said. Mrs. Walls stared at him. He laughed and said, I want to sign up." "What?" The woman next to him set her box down on the counter. "For the talent show," said Gary. "I want to be in the talent show." So how do I sign up?" "I don't know. Can I ask you something?" Miss Walls sighed and then headed to the back of the office. She returned a moment later. Nobody in the office seemed to know, or care for that matter. All anyone was interested in was why Gary wasn't in class where he belonged. "All I want to do is sign up for the talent show," he said aloud as he headed to class. Around him, posters urged him to be in the show and show off his talents. First prize would be a $100 savings bond. Second prize would be a $25 gift certificate at Zulu's Records and Tapes. And third prize would be 2 free Sundays at Mauritia's ice cream parlor. But none of the posters said where or how to sign up for it. "Don't be cool, make a fool out of yourself in the talent show." "I know I can do that," he said. He learned the talent show would be on November 16th. He couldn't remember today's date, but he knew the month was October. He figured he had about a month to get ready. "It'll probably take me that long just to sign up for the stupid thing," he grumbled. Mrs. Carlyle glanced at him but didn't say anything when he walked in late. The date was on the board, Tuesday, October 23rd. He figured it out at the desk. At first, he didn't know if October had 30 or 31 days, but then he remembered Halloween was October 31st. The talent show would be on a Friday. He had exactly 3 weeks and 3 days. He spoke to Miss Carlyle after class. "Do you know where you're supposed to sign up for the talent show?" Mrs. Carlyle didn't seem to understand the question. "The show is for students, not teachers," she said. "I know. I want to be in the show. Do you know who I'm supposed to tell?" "I'm not supposed to just walk up on stage without telling anyone, am I?" "I wouldn't think so," said Mrs. Carlyle, but she didn't appear to know whom he was supposed to tell. So do you hear?" he asked. "They're not making pencils any longer?" "Pardon? They're long enough already." Gary sat at his desk in math, looking at Mrs. Langley, but not really listening. It was beginning to feel like a bad dream, one where he just wanted to do something simple, like open his locker, but for some reason, he could never get it done. He decided he'd wait until 5th period gym and talk to Joe Reed. Joe would know. "Gary," said Miss Langley, as Gary was leaving math class, "the homework assignment is on the board." He glanced at the board. He knew it was there. He'd already written it down. She didn't have to keep telling him every single day. What does she think I am? Stupid? Outside at recess, he decided he couldn't wait until 5th period. What if it was too late? What if Joe was absent? He spotted Ira Feldman sitting on a planter, looking at his baseball cards. "Hi, Ira," said Gary. "Goon?" Ira muttered, then looked back at his baseball cards. Ira owned more than 1,000 baseball cards, but for some reason had chosen to bring a certain 8 of them to school. "So did you hear?" said Gary. "After this year, they're not making bats any longer." "What? That's crazy. Aluminum bats are no good. Even if you're jammed, you can still get a solid hit." Gary had no idea what Ira was talking about. He hadn't said anything about aluminum or wooden bats. "They're long enough already, huh?" They're not making bats any longer. They're long enough already. Ira proceeded to explain to Gary how different players like different sized bats. Rod Carew, for example, used a very short bat, whereas Willie Stargell used a big bat. Gary nodded along. He didn't know who any of these people were. So, he said, do you know anything about the talent show? No, not really. Do you know where you're supposed to sign up for it? Ira shrugged. It's not too late, is it? Ira didn't know that either. Gary wished he could talk to Angeline. She'd know about the talent show. It didn't matter that she was 1,000 miles away in another school. Somehow she'd know. Paul Wattenberg, Ryan Utt, and Matt Hughes were sitting on the grass. If April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring? Asked Gary. Your butt, said Ryan. What do you want, Goon? Asked Paul. Have you seen Joe Reed? He asked. Yeah, I've seen him, said Matt. I saw him yesterday. Paul and Ryan laughed. So I was wondering, said Gary, do you know where you're supposed to sign up for the talent show? Yeah, on your butt, said Ryan. Evidently, butt was Ryan Utt's favorite word, probably because it rhymed with his last name. What do you want, Goon? Paul asked again. He had just told them he wanted to sign up for the talent show. I want to be in the talent show. You gonna dance? Asked Matt. Matt's friends laughed. The dance of the Goon, said Matt. They laughed again. I'm going to tell jokes, said Gary. Well, let's hear one, Paul urged. Gary thought a second. What do you call a cow without legs? They stared at him. Ground beef. They stared at him. You better stick to dancing, said Matt. Every morning when I wake up, said Ryan Utt, the first thing I do is thank the Lord I'm not Gary Boone. Gary felt a hand on his shoulder. A girl said, Gary. He turned around to see it was Brenda Thompson. He turned around to see Brenda Thompson. It was probably the first time Brenda Thompson had ever spoken to him. It was certainly the first time she'd ever touched him. Did you say you wanted to be in the talent show? Brenda asked. She seemed genuinely interested. If I'm not too late. See Miss Langley, said Brenda. She's the faculty advisor. Thanks, Brenda, said Gary. Thanks, Brenda, said Paul in a mocking voice, though it was more like he was making fun of Brenda than of Gary. Ooh, said Matt, as if there was something going on between Brenda and Gary. The boys thought that was hilarious. Brenda looked scornfully at them. Get real, she said. The talent show had been Brenda Thompson's idea. It'll be fun, she'd said at the student council meeting. I think it sounds stupid, said Philip Corbin, 8th grade president. Only an idiot would want to make a fool out of himself in front of the whole school. Oh, it'll be fun, Brenda said again. Most everybody agreed with Philip, but in the end, they voted for the talent show because Brenda was popular and because nobody else had a better idea for celebrating Floyd Hicks's birthday. But the real reason Brenda had suggested the talent show wasn't because she thought it would be fun. She wanted a chance to sing on stage. She imagined herself as the next Madonna. She never admitted this to anyone. She thought she would say something like, well, I guess I should be in the talent show since it was my idea. What should I do? I don't know. I guess I'll sing. And it just so happens that on the day of the talent show, a big-time Hollywood producer gets a flat tire while driving through town in his Lamborghini. And while the tire is being fixed, he notices a poster for the talent show. So he has nothing better to do. Since he has nothing better to do, he checks it out. When he hears Brenda sing, he immediately rushes backstage and signs her up to do records and movies. She doesn't even go back to school. She just hops in his red convertible and heads straight for Hollywood with the wind blowing in her hair. There's only one problem, he said. It's your name. Brenda Thompson. It's so ordinary. I know what you mean, she agrees. I've always hated it. How about if we call you Ruby Goldmine? I love it. But all Brenda's daydreams were about to go up in smoke because the last time she had checked, not one single person had signed up to be in the talent show. She herself wasn't going to sign up for it until some other kids did first. Imagine how embarrassing it would be, she thought, if she was the only one in the talent show. When recess ended, Gary was waiting by the door to Miss Langley's room. Gary, what are you doing here? I want to be in the talent show, he blurted, almost shouting. Miss Langley smiled. Okay, she said quietly. They went inside. She handed him a clipboard with a piece of paper attached to it. Sign your name on the list, and next to it, put down what you're planning to do in the show. Gary looked at the blank piece of paper. There are no other names here. You're the first, said Miss Langley. He smiled as all his worries vanished. He no longer even knew why he had been so worried. After all, there was no reason why he shouldn't be able to sign up for the talent show just like anybody else. He held the clipboard high over his head. What are you doing? asked Miss Langley. I'm signing up, he said. He wrote, Gary W. Boone, tell jokes. Gary's middle name was Arthur. And that is the end of chapter 4.